Campbell's comments. On location today, we're at sunny Charlton. We're going to a bit of background noise, Tobes, but we had it quiet for a while, and if I had got me backside into gear, we would have been good as gold. But grand opening day, 18 months in the making for Charlton, but it was to be your official last day, but it is officially now well and truly your last day. We're here on a Sunday instead of a Friday. Toby McKinnon, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. 2 days into my retirement. Big
day here. This would be a little bit of a feather in your cap, I would imagine, getting this complex up and going. I mean, Joey and everyone else behind the scenes has done a lot, but Country Club has done a fair bit as well.
No, not really. It's all been done by the Charlton 2020 group and led by John Tormey of the Harness Racing Club, and then Joe Thompson ably took it over. So yeah, it's their baby, and it's just something for the industry to be proud of, to be part of such a community building.
It is an amazing building, and anyone watching out on site. You recently retired as, I suppose retired's the right word. Is that the right word? Or you stood down? Stood down as resigned. That's a better word. I wasn't going to go that harsh, but you did. Trots Club Victoria. This is going to be a tough interview. He's going to pick on every word I say. Trots Club Victoria, and I just thought, well, I wouldn't mind catching up with you, and just a lot of people out there probably don't understand what Trots Club Victoria do and your position, what it was there, and some of the things you've achieved.
What do we do? Yeah, it's a wide-ranging role. You effectively are at HRV. I work. There's an office in that building, so I work with HRV on a whole range of things. So Stephen Bell, the general manager of racing, would work on programming and race dates, any issues around clubs and buildings with Rob Pongo. A lot of HR. There's a hell of a lot of HR at Trots Club Victoria, helping clubs with managers and issues that arise in the HR space. A lot of the clubs, they're volunteer committees that don't really have the skill set in human relations, and in the modern world it's a fairly it's a bit of a minefield. So I worked a lot with Isabel Gallardi at HRV in the HR space, and John Briffer in the legal department as well. He sort of crossed over to HR and things around the governance and model rules. I think I've read enough model rules at clubs to last me a lifetime now, because they're all slightly different, and when there's an issue arise, you've got to make sure you follow your model rules of your club. Then their marketing department at HRV, a hell of a lot of work with the marketing department, and they're so skinny in the marketing department, and the amount of work that they do, I suppose we inspire each other and just bounce off each other. The Cody Winnell, Michael Howard, Tori Glenister and Nikita Ross, the four of those, and then Craig Russell as well is the bit of the guru behind the scenes. So there's that element, and then there's just little things with race times and etc. that I'd work with the racing department, being Paul Oxenford, Tim Belfridge and Darcy Ross. So then downstairs, I'm just working around the building at HRV, so I get them all. Then downstairs, the finance department, and helping clubs that are on shared services and clubs with any other finance issues that keep arising. And then, so that's the element I worked with HRV, and then there was an element you work against them as well. So that's lobbying for more funding for clubs, supporting clubs who are trying to get grants for RAP applications. And then there's a real element as well around just being there for the managers of the club. So they might be having a tough day or have a tough issue, and they just want to ring and talk to someone about it and bounce ideas off them for half an hour. So some days I could spend 6-7 hours on the phone just talking to people about things.
It's a bloody all-encompassing job, because I think I got lost at the first part, but I do think that's one of the things about what Trots Club Victoria actually is. A lot of people say it's a club that doesn't even have its own club, but you actually are not that. You're a facilitator, aren't you? You actually are the number one club in a way, and all the other clubs bounce off you guys for ideas and a direction.
Yeah, well, Eric Hendricks at Bendigo said, I'm the ultimate middleman. I'm just stuck in the middle of nowhere. You sort of got no power to really do anything as such. Like, there's no budget for anything. You've got no authority over the clubs. So when clubs come to you, you can only lend support and guidance and try and show them the right direction. Sometimes they choose to follow, sometimes they don't. And it's very hard for anybody to know everything about all the clubs and then their local community. And she's a pretty diverse and pretty hard task.
It would be, and I would imagine you'd get some clubs that see another club doing something. They say, well, how come they can do that and we can't do that? And there'd be a lot of other factors involved in that. It wouldn't just be you guys are saying, oh, Bendigo can do that, but Ballarat you can't. There's so many other factors behind the scenes that make these decisions happen, and that's where you come into it, and that's where the Trots Club Victoria come into it.
A little bit. There is a lot of cross-pollination of ideas, but say, to use yourself for example, you do a great job at Bendigo with the all this stuff that we're doing now, but to take another club like Terang, they don't have a committee member that has that skill set, so that you can tell Terang countless times, but if they don't have somebody with that skill set, then they just can't get a volunteer to do it. So, but then they've got a volunteer who's brilliant in other areas where Bendigo doesn't. So it's about getting to know the clubs and the people inside that club and what things that they can make work for them. And that's not an easy task. That's 60,000 Ks a year, getting to know people.
Well, that's one thing I was going to get onto in a little while, the amount of Ks that you do. Is that one of the challenges, though, back to what we were just saying then, in harness racing, to be able to probably share some of these ideas, like especially with committee people? I think a lot of people don't like sharing committee ideas in case someone gets the idea first. But as an industry going forward, should we be trying to share a lot more of our resources?
Yeah, we should, and we do. We do it as best we can, and again, it's so hard because we're so far and wide. We did a webinar series 18 months ago around marketing of clubs, and a lot of the clubs were involved in that. It was really good to get a bit of cross-pollination. We actually had Andrea Gorman from Charlton on as a guest. It was a 4-part series. Paul Rouse came on, talked about what Ballarat do well. Tim Scala came on from Mildura and talked about what they did well. So it was a really good 4-part webinar series. There's another one in the pipeline around governance training and how to run a club properly. So then we should have the 4 marketing webinars and the governance trainings. But it's such a demanding job now running these clubs because of all the red tape involved, and there's such a transition of managers. Like, I think I've seen somewhere between 15 or 20 managers in the last 3 years, and every time a new one starts, you're sort of generally back to square one again and got to train them up, and it takes some time.
You get someone like Bendigo, I can say this about Eric Hendricks, because, absolutely zero harness racing experience, full stop, but did have managing and running a club experience on a different side. So there'd have to be a lot of, I suppose, give and take. You got to say to him, no, you can't do this and you can't do that. But the flip side of it is, there must also be a lot of times where you can turn around and say, he gives you an idea and you go, oh, I've never thought about that.
Yeah, my late father's, one of his favourite things was your greatest strength's your greatest weakness. So there you're saying Eric's greatest weakness might have been his lack of harness racing knowledge, but that's probably his greatest strength as well, because he brings a clean pair of ideas, a clean set of eyes, a clean pair of eyes and a clean set of ideas. I got that the wrong way around, but that sort of, those people, I think running a club, you don't really need to know the racing, because there should be enough racing experience on your committee. It's more about running a club for food and beverage. That's where your money is. Food, beverage, getting people through the gate. Running a harness racing club these days is really, it's an entertainment business and hospitality business.
Some of your highlights, I suppose, short term, while you've been here, some of the things you're proud of?
Oh, I think the highlight for me is the relationships I've built with people along the way. So I've made some really, really good friends along the way, right around the whole network. And the lessons I've learnt, just little things I've learned along the way from people like Joe Thompson here at Charlton. He's a bloody wonder, Joe Thompson. He's just, if I could clone Joe Thompson and spread him out 26 times across the network, it'd be a great result. Ian Purdy at Kyabram, just a man he built the Kyabram track 49 years ago, or 50 years ago now, and then he was the Secretary-Treasurer there for 49 years. But he did all these other things as well, like raising money for local kids to pay for their fuel to go to Bendigo so they could, go to footy training or something. And people like Gary Lyon have benefited from that along the way. And getting to know people like that in the club network has just been just fantastic. And there's so many, I could go on forever about it, but yeah.
Going forward, we'll stay on the idea of all the clubs at the minute, the challenges coming, for harness racing, the things that you can see that are probably going to be some of the bigger issues?
Oh, look, I know HRV talk about it a bit, but this point of consumption tax is really hard. So effectively, the government's sort of getting what we used to get in a way, and they're going to hold it and give it back to us at some stage. It's just the in-between of trying to get it back off them. It puts clubs in a pretty good position, though, because I think the government's going to want to invest that point of consumption tax money into the club network. So I think clubs that can get their ducks in a row, they can really benefit well from the point of consumption tax. But then the I call it the red tape. The red tape of running a harness racing club now, even if it's 1, 2, 6 meetings a year, it's sort of 10 hours a week, and it's just getting so hard for each of those little clubs to manage all that workload. And where it's heading now, and it's sort of already coming in a bit by stealth, is a bit of a regional management model. And here again, Gary Cooper he's like the racing manager at Charlton, and he's also doing Elmore. There's a girl, Brookshane Bull, she's doing Swan Hill and Bort. And I just think as time goes forward, we're going to have to use the management services, centralised management services of clubs.
Going forward, just back to your point of consumption tax, you say for clubs to get their ducks in order. What does that mean? Like get their betting turnover on track up, or would you say they've got to do?
Oh, that's thinking about when the next election is. So when does the government want to spend money and make an announcement? So to take a club like Ararat, for example, just to pluck one, they're in a marginal seat. So they've got to be thinking in the next elections in 2 years' time. So in 12 months' time, we need to be telling the government what we want and putting ourselves front of mind at the government, saying we're a marginal seat. This is what we want to do at Ararat. Come and support us. And that's what I mean about getting your ducks in a line. So now, if the election's 2 years out, as a club and a committee, you need to be thinking about what should we be doing in 2 years. And the biggest thing as an industry, I think we have to do, and particularly for clubs, is on-course stabling. The barriers to entry for trainers and drivers in our sport to train a couple of horses it's just too much. Like, it's $500,000 to set up your own place with a training track and fences, and it's not like that's like building you could build a second house for $500,000 and the value of your property goes up. You build a trotting track and fences, the value of your property probably goes down, actually. Like, I'm only joking, but so clubs really have to invest in on-course training, and I think the government will really support that when it comes to it.
I totally agree with that. As a person that actually owns a property, talking to you today, and I was actually weeding. I think there's not just the fact you put a track on there and all the rest. There's so much upkeep in your own property, and put them on the track. The tracks could get financially better off for it, as well as the participants would be financially better off, and also be able to give participants, which are all doing it pretty hard, the ability to have some time away. Because, I mean, you need licensed people to be able to feed your horses, and that you can get the stable next door, build up that friendship, and it's a way of potentially changing our lifestyle. I think that people probably sell it a bit short.
Yeah, and the other element is someone comes into the sport, like Rick Cashman, for example, came from out of the sport, and he moved in at Cranbourne. He probably knew very little about the sport. It's a lovely guy, and blokes like Charlie Wooten and Michael Hughes, they all helped him and assisted him with training, and, this is going wrong with a horse, so he just goes next door, talks to someone that's experienced about the sport. So it gives people like that a real chance to actually have a crack at this sport that we love so much.
And that's what harness racing always was, wasn't it? We were able to have a crack and get started, and then just sort of all of a sudden it's become very, very expensive sport, and probably a lot more expensive than people understand.
Yeah, it is, because, our galloping neighbours, or cousins that we call them, still cost as much to feed a horse in harness racing as it does in thoroughbreds. But I think we need to create a greater divide between the amateur and the professional. So I've always said, like, the $4,500 races are too close to the sevens. We've sort of merged the two pools together. I look back fondly at a bloke called Bob Dixon, who's passed away now, from Yarra Glen. He was a battling trainer, but he would have rather run in a $2,000 race or a $1,500 race away from all those better trainers. And I think we've merged our amateur and professional pool too much. I'd rather that bottom end value of race drop down a bit. And the hobbyist, he's not reliant on that. He's got a job. Like, Bob Dixon had a job. He didn't need the money. He just wanted to put a photo on the wall, whether it was a 1,500 or a 4.5, didn't matter. Then with that less of money down the bottom, we should be able to put more money back into that professional level. And if we could make the 7s, 8s or 9s even, that'd be a great result.
Have like a picnic scene is what they do in the gallops, but have it, like, we can call it our restricted scene, where also young drivers coming through can cut their teeth, and probably older drivers that don't enjoy driving against the A graders, they could still compete against the juniors and have that little bit of fun on the side.
Yeah, well, that's that hobbyist scene, isn't it? So, the professionals still would go in them, like to give a horse a trial or something. I remember in the Benalla Cup one day, and David Aiken had a horse in it, so we were there with Rolly Wilson was battling away and beat Akey in the Benalla Cup and sits proudly on his wall, right next to the Cobram Cup, and people would walk into the room, you wouldn't know what was a better race, the Benalla or the Cobram Cup, like if you're out of the sport. So one's a $1,500 race and one's a $35, huge difference.
It is, but as you just said, then it doesn't worry Rolly because it's on the wall and it's one of his favourite treasured wins, and that probably is what I fell in love with. I must admit when I was with the sport, because we definitely had a restricted scene there for a long time, the Donalds and those places, and they've gone past. Was grass track racing. Unfortunately, didn't get off the ground for you, but that's one of the things that Yarra Glen took on board. But trying to show initiative outside of there's, I think, more plans for grass track racing. Unfortunately, just timing and all the rest, is there?
Oh, I hope so. It's something I was pushing pretty hard in there at HRV. I think there's a lot we can do around that, in that it can open up some new avenues for us. So I went to Kilcoy in Queensland. There, the Gallops Club were only getting about 5 races for a race meeting, and they had this revolutionary idea, we'll combine it with a harness meeting. So they have 3 harness races and 5 Gallops races that make up a program up there at Kilcoy, and I think that's something that we can do going forward, whether it's existing harness racing clubs like Yarra Valley and Cranbourne and Swan Hill, or whether it's Werribee running a race meeting where we've got 4 races, or a quaddie, before the Gallops meeting, or at Bairnsdale or Avoca, or Echuca could run a harness meeting at the Gallops track, or Terang could run a harness meeting at the Gallops track. So we've really got to explore other ideas, and again that would go back to that sort of hobbyist group as well.
Donald's, Warwick, Nabil's tracks, we're nowhere near it. I mean, Owen and those places are falling apart. Left the field ideas that you couldn't get up and running while you were in the position? Is there one that you sort of would like to put out there and give people some time to digest, even if the hierarchy weren't that keen on it?
To quote Brett Shambrook, my ideas are only 1 in 100, but he said just keep battling away, and I have about 5 a day, so it only take me 20 days to get to a good one generally. My jokes, actually, another guy, Danny Coppins, he's not in harness race, he used to say my jokes were 1 in 100 as well, so there's a bit of a common thread there.
I'll agree with him.
Yeah, I've had lots of left of field ideas, but I think they've all got I'm always coming up with something and going into the racing department or the marketing team and telling them what I think, and then we'll have a sort of a stand-up discussion. Might be myself and Blake Redden and Jason Bonington and Paul Oxenford and Cody Winnell, and it sort of starts out sometimes as a harebrained idea, and by the end of it, it's still a harebrained idea and won't work, or it's got a little bit of legs to it, and they'll start, and it might get developed from there. So there has been a few come to fruition, and it's been good. Yeah,
it's one of the things I love about harness racing, especially doing what I do out there, and I'm sure you do as well with Thursday for Trots. You put an idea out there, and even if it is silly, people will try and just groom it a little bit to see if it could actually fit. They don't always say no to it, don't they?
Yeah, no, they don't, because we've sort of got nothing to lose with an idea. Try it for a month. I think I'd like to see Mildura have open nominations where everyone just nominates their horse and let HRV pick the field. So then you just go bottom up 99999 all the way up, things like that. So, but we've just got to try these things and give it a go for a month or 8 weeks and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, I think I'm big on 9-horse fields. I think 9-horse fields are the way to go. 6 off the front, 3 off the second row. It'll spread race fields out a bit more, create more products. So there's been examples where there'll be a 12-horse race at Bendigo one day, and to use the old language, a C2, C3 was a 12-horse race, and then the next day there's a 6-horse field. I'd rather see them be a 9 and a 9. I know there's implications for trainers in that, but I just think the 9-horse fields was something I've banged on about a lot over the journey.
It's a different one, I must say. As a trainer, I don't know necessarily if I agree or not. I'll probably have to think about it for a little while, but I suppose streamlining, and I know that's one thing in the pipeworks about probably potentially racing clubs on certain days, and I know initially that's probably been met with a little bit of hostility from you, but from other people. But having fixed clubs so people know when they're racing and where they're racing, and then they might not know exactly when they're racing, but if they race on a set day for the majority of the time, try and streamline it back to that 9 horse field. Is that something that you're very keen on from a betting turnover point of view?
Yeah, the uniform calendar. So it's something I've worked hard on, trying to work out a way where it was just set, so Saturdays and Friday nights are a bit different, of course, because they're feature events and they sort of float around everywhere. But then if Thursday nights were the same 2 clubs and those 2 clubs just rotated, particularly if they're in the same region, and just to use Kilmore and Bendigo for an example, if those 2 clubs just raced every second Thursday night and alternated, it just makes life easier for someone like a Chris Sinocio that then knows every Thursday night I'm going to the Trots. So then every Thursday night I need to employ a casual person to come in and work for a couple of hours. I spent a lot of time over the journey in my life helping trainers as a volunteer like Charlie Wooten or someone, and he's trying to organise his life and have a part-time job as well as train harness horses. And if I could have said to him every Monday there's going to be a race meeting in the Eastern Zone or whatever the day is, he knows then that he just doesn't get a job on that Monday. Mildura, again, to use Mildura for example, if they knew every Friday they were going to be racing, they can go out and say to a girl, can you take a job in the bar? It's going to be every Friday. At the moment she says, and it's the same for the trainers, they have to go to their boss and say, can I have next Friday off and then the Tuesday after and then the Thursday the one after? And their boss goes, well, I don't want to employ you if you can't, But if you go to your boss and say, I can work Monday to Thursday, but I can never work Friday because I go to the Trots every week, all of a sudden, because they train horses or drive horses, all of a sudden their boss says, yeah, I can deal with that.
I was dead against it. I must say that. There was no hassles there at all. I was dead against it, but after thinking about it and listening to it for a while, I'm sort of more to it. I never thought about the person working the bar, as you said, or the caterers. To try and get caterers at clubs is a nightmare now. I know a lot of clubs are turning over lots and lots of caterers. If they knew every second Tuesday they're going to get work, or every third Tuesday, doesn't have to be every second, like whenever it is that they get it. But as you say, the bar stuff, the one I think is a great selling point from it is to be able to sell your venue then as a functions facility, because if you're not consistent, you can't get a Rotary Club or a men's shed, you can't consistently get them. If they know every second week, so they can say, well, the first Monday of every month we're going to meet at the Bendigo Trotting Track and watch the Trots and have our meeting at the same time and have a bit of fun. It's an easier way to sell it, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and non-race day functions as well. So if a bingo club come to Bendigo and say we want to pay $100 a week and hire the facility every Wednesday night, and Eric says, yeah, you can have it every Wednesday night, bar 4 a year, they say, well, you're not the place for us. So then you miss out on that little high, And I know it's not a lot of money, $100 a week, but $100 a week a year is $5,200, and all that money goes back into our facilities, into our core product, the racing code.
It makes it. Then we improve our venue. Then we get places like here, like where we are now, Charlton, because that's sort of what Charlton have done. I don't know if they're having bingo, but they have got a shared facility. I would imagine one of the problems with that shared facility, though, they're going to have to be aware of football games and the like going forward, that if all of a sudden the Charlton Footy Club want to put lights up and have night games on a Thursday or a Friday after, like during winter times, like they're issues that they then have to come across. Whereas if they know they're racing every third Wednesday or whatever it works out to be for the club, or every second Wednesday, they can say, yeah, go your hardest, because we'll be racing outside of that, so you can play your footy Friday nights.
Yeah, again, so you'd link a club like this up with Maryborough and have Maryborough and Charlton alternate every Wednesday, or what it would be. And a Wednesday would work well, because you wouldn't think there'd be footy training on a Wednesday afternoon too often.
Yeah, I must admit, I was against it. I'm not against it as much. The more I think about it, and after having this conversation with you, I'm probably even more for it. I think it's got a lot of legs. It's probably organising families, people with young families, and the rest as well, trying to work out what kids can do, dancing and things like that, if they know roughly where they are. It does definitely makes a lot of sense, mate. I've given this one some legs for you, haven't I?
There's been a lot of work going into this over the journey, so I'm only using examples on days and dates, so don't anyone get too excited about it. It's all sort of over to Stephen Bell and HRV. It's something that actually, when I went on the board at Trots Clubs Victoria 6 years ago, a guy who's just walking past, Gary Cooper, had this idea and he presented it. Then when I first started, I went up and I sat with Gary for a day and went right through it and said, well, this is something I think that we've really got to explore to the nth degree. I annoyed Glenn Kearney about it for about 12 months, and at the end of his 12 months he realised I think he could see the potential in it. And then Stephen Bell sat in a chair and annoyed him about it for 12 months, and he said at the end of the 12 months, he said, yeah, I can see the potential in it. So whether it can work, I'm not sure, because there's so many intricacies involved with clubs, but hopefully we can head towards that anyway.
And make it a little bit better. Wouldn't not everyone would get Sundays and the likes, and we can do what we're doing today. Warrigal's racing today, and we've got Charlton tonight as well. So it can definitely work that way. Thursday for Trots, mate. Show you and me sort of got behind. You'd have to be pretty happy with the reception we're getting, I think, from that. I think a lot of people probably out there that aren't aware of what it is and think it's what we're trying to achieve with the show. But I think a lot of the people we've been able to introduce on this show, for people out there that didn't have any idea who they were, I think it's definitely helping. Oh,
definitely. What people fell in love with this sport were the horses and the characters of the sport. You go back to the 80s and it was all about the Vin Knights, the Gavin Langs, the Ted Demlers, and then all the little characters as well, like Bill Panasopoulos of the world. And we've lost that with Sky Racing. We all know it. It's wall-to-wall coverage, so we sort of don't know the people. And to just have something where we can spend 15 minutes and get to know a few of the people involved in our sport a bit better, I think so a wonderful thing. And anyone that followed my tips from last night, they would be absolutely smoking. It was if you had had $1 each way on the 3 tips I did at the 31-minute mark of the show, Paul, you would have collected $78.
Luckily, I can edit this. I'll cut that piece right out straight away. But it's just interesting with the demise of the Trot Weekly and all these papers that gone by the wayside. I think we have to try and embrace it. There's plenty of people out there that don't like Facebook and all the rest, but we'll try and get it up on YouTube. It's actually up as a podcast channel. We have to. I think that's one thing that harness racing definitely do, and I think trying to sell the industry a little bit better going forward. I think that's one of the things we have to make sure we do.
It is. We are sort of preaching to the converted, though, so we're not going out to anyone outside of our sport. But what you got to do, you got to try and appease your customers that you've already got. So it's not all about getting new people to the support. We've got to keep the ones we've got in the sport as well. So whether that's a part of keeping those ones in the sport, Brett Shamrock at Yarra Valley used to say, we might have a marquee of 100 people come to a race meeting. We've got to get them back next year first and foremost, and get everyone back next year. Then any additionals that we get add to it. And I suppose it's a similar philosophy. If we can preach to our converted and keep our converted, then that should facilitate the growth in the sport.
Absolutely. And then you get people, there's so many people on social media like Kate Hargraves, there's heaps out there, Ash Brennan's, that are making other people are aware of it, that they follow them for different reasons, and then they show how much they love harness racing. We can cross-pollinate them through that show. So I think exactly what you said, we've just got to try and get what we've got and then build it from there. Now, we'll probably wrap this up because there's a few people starting to come, but you have left your position, but you're not going to be lost to harness racing short term. I mean, short term, you're staying with me on Thursday for Trots, but you don't want to be lost to harness racing.
Oh, I don't know where I'm at. I've got a few things on the go at the moment, so something will come to fruition in the coming days or weeks, and whether it's in harness racing or not, I'm not sure.
But even if it's not, you still won't be lost to harness racing?
No, I was born and bred into the sport, and unfortunately, like many people, once you've been bitten by it, you just can never get away from it. So I'll always be involved in some way, shape or form, for sure.
Toby McKinnon, mate, thank you very much. Second race today is the farewell Toby McKinnon pace, or trot, actually it is, trot, yeah. It's good you don't have a microphone, you couldn't correct me then. It's going to be a good day here at Charlton, and I think you should be very proud of a lot of the things you've done, mate, and personally, from a personal point of view, I've enjoyed the company and the fun, and I'm hoping you're definitely not going to be lost to the industry.
Yeah, I think anyone that watches Thursday for Trots and this might see a bit of a different side to me this time, a bit more serious, I suppose. But thanks, Paul, and thanks to all the I suppose I always say it, all the volunteers in our sport that just give out countless hours to just better the fabric of their local communities and the broader community, and they're the ones that motivate people like me to do what we do.
Very good. Toby McKinnon, thank you very much, mate.